And it could have gone either way. You know, with things just starting to open up in square dancing post-COVID, a lot of activities such as this around the country are still being canceled. I know I've canceled some things even this coming fall because I felt I didn't have enough time to start and get a good group of dancers for this year alone. So I commend the committee for making the attempt to do this. And I knew, and I think we all knew, that we probably wouldn't have the attendance that we normally have at this type of a function, because I think some people are just still, for whatever reason, even though they're probably vaccinated, they just want to stay home and they just want to give it more time, or from what I'm hearing, they want to start in a lot of the clubs, especially around the country, in my area for sure. No, we're going to wait till September, we're going to wait till September. I'm sure you've all heard that from some of the clubs, or your own clubs are waiting for September. So, again, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for the past 2 or 3 years. It's been on my calendar. But just a little bit about me. I have, I guess, going into my 47th year of calling. I started calling I started dancing when I was 16. And I don't even know how I got into it. It was just like, this is a true story. I was in a summer play. My family had moved out of the neighborhood. So I was 16, just started my first job on weekends at a hospital. I didn't know anybody, didn't know what to do. So they got, the summer park was having a musical. It was No No Nanette. And they said they needed chorus people. So I went down and got into it. And the gentleman and his mother, and he was a square dance caller, although I didn't know it. He had a brother who was a square dance caller. They put the play on every year. And then at the end of the year, in September, I got this little postcard. I wish I saved it, because you save the things that are important to you. And it was like for 50 cents a lesson, come down to the park and rec. It was bigger than this hall, but similar to this, but much. It was a indoor roller skate with the sides that come down like this, and they had a stage. And I said, "Oh, square dance? I don't know what to do." So I went. Man, it was like all these young girls. I'm thinking, woo! I said, "This looks really cool," And so I took the lessons. I started in September and I graduated in February. And it's like, all of us just bonded together, all the kids. And most of us had our licenses, our cars. And we'd start going to local dances, then the New England Convention, which used to get about 8,000 in April. We all drove up for that, and everyone was, I remember, like, I would dance with one woman one weekend, and then some guy would dance with the next, and everyone just sort of switched partners, and we had a great time. And I gotta be honest with you, I think that's really why I stayed in the activity, because being a 16-year-old guy, when you can have 16 or 17-year-old girls, and it's just natural, and everyone liked this activity, was fun. But I was literally dancing 7 nights a week. And one time, my mother, who was a nurse, and she had to go to work 11 to 7, and I wanted to go to a square dance, and I couldn't get a ride there, so I took her car. She was sleeping before she had to get up and go to work. I just took the car, and I left her a note, and I said, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I had to go to a square dance." And so she didn't have a car to go to work. I wasn't thinking. At 16, you don't think. That's how much a teenager. And here's another true story of my stupidity. One time, from Waterbury, where I grew up, to Hartford, it's a good 30 miles on I-84. It's 30 miles on the highway. No lie, I'm not making this up, so you can't convince me there's not a God, because I know there is. I literally got on my bicycle and somehow got on Route I-84 and started bicycling from Waterbury to Hartford. And all of a sudden, a bunch of my friends, square dance friends who were going to the dance, came by in the car and pulled over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I didn't have a ride. I wanted to go to the dance." It's 30 miles. We put my bike in the car and I went to the dance. Stupid. I mean, there's no other way but that's how much I love this activity. And I decided to become a caller, and I said, "Oh, I want to do what that person does on the stage," not really realizing how much it takes to be a true square dance caller. And I went to like 7 or 8 caller schools. I was a caller school junkie. I went to the same school every year, and eventually I asked the owners if I could assist, just help out. No money. Can I just come up and help, help run the groups? And I'll be your gopher and do whatever you want. And they said yes. And then eventually I took over their school, and I got my accreditation from Callerlab in 1991. So I've been an accredited caller coach for many years. But I guess what I wanted to point out was that square dancing, like whether you're a caller, a cuer, or a dancer, it's in our blood. And I look back now at some of the stupid things I really did. I really did ride a bicycle on a highway, and I can't imagine that, for the love of God, that my friends came by first before the state troopers, because there was no way they were going to let me, and there was no way I would have made it. And I didn't think. I just said, I got to get going now. And it's like, I don't know, stupid. But, the things you do with your kids. And I think that's why I stayed in the activity, because, I think here at the Pacific Northwest, you still thrive with teens and young dancers. And I can't say, in my travels around the country, it's like that anymore. It's certainly not like that in New England. Very, very rare that we have young people. We may get a few, but we don't have them like we do. We don't have teen clubs. We used to have teen festivals. That's how many teens there were in New England. All died out, all gone. So I commend the Pacific Northwest. Believe me, everywhere across the country, we all hear of the Pacific Northwest and the teen competition and the teen festival. Absolutely. You're not just in a microcosm over here. You are well known. And it's like, oh, did you see the video of the teen competition? Or so-and-so is going to be calling a competition this year. And we just drool with envy because we don't have the teens. Not by lack of effort, but whatever we're doing out in the New England area is just not working we're not getting the young kids. And most of the country's not getting the young kids either. But that's a little bit about me. I've also had the good fortune to be able to travel around the world and call. One of my things I'm very proud of is I've been to Russia 5 times. And people say, Russia? Yeah, but I've never been to Moscow. I've seen cities that some people don't even know about, but I've never seen Moscow other than the airport. And it's the one place I really want to go is Moscow. Maybe I'll get there someday. But square dancing around the world is just like the square dancing in the States. It has its highs and its lows, and we can talk about this later. I won't get into my speech. I did write a speech, and this speech happens to be my chairman's speech for Callerlab, which I gave virtually on March 27th. For the past 2 years, I've been blessed to be the chairman of the board of Callerlab, but also I've never had a convention because the last 2 were canceled. So this is the first time I'm really giving the speech in front of a live audience, if you don't mind. I did cross out some things that deal with the words Callerlab because they were more Callerlab related. But it has a lot to do with the activity, especially coming out of post-COVID. So it's not all Callerlab. It just happens to be, this was the speech that I wrote. And the name of the speech is called The Path Forward. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be looking down, reading it, and then I'll add to it. And of course, we'll have questions, and I welcome your questions. Football legend Vince Lombardi once said, "The achievements of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual." And when I say organization, you just think of your councils, your federations, your clubs. Okay, so don't think Callerlab the whole way through. It is without a doubt that the leaders that blazed the path for the formation of square dancing were individuals who understood the need and the importance of such organizations. It was indeed the combined efforts of all these individuals that created these organizations in which the entire square dance world has come to know and rely upon, and also for leadership. These leaders encouraged collaboration and created an atmosphere of teamwork. They provided the necessary structure for everyone to be successful. So let's think about your councils, your federations. They were here probably long before you got into square dancing. And I know I've talked to many of you through the weekend. You said, well, I was part of the original committee, or I did this. So this all is attributes to yourself as well. Effective and successful organizations communicate their values, missions, and goals clearly. These are what some might call its, quote, why. These are key parts of an organization's culture that defines its driving force. The, quote, why regarding the purpose of square dance organizations coming into existence was to create a more unified method of communicating, and for Callerlab's sake, establishing programs and policies for the callers and the leaders to use worldwide. And many of our original programs that we dance to now, basic, mainstream, whatever, are still in existence. Successful organizations also have the means to effectively communicate its purpose to the world. Our dance programs are the key vehicle to transport our message to the dancer community. Effective organizations also understand the need for growth. While change is inevitable, the organizations that survive learn to adapt and grow, not only during the good times, but they also learn how to maneuver through the troubled waters. And again, your organizations have had troubled times. I don't know any organization in our activity that hasn't gone through its ups and downs, and they've had to adapt and change or they don't exist. Our entire square dance community worldwide has been dealt a serious blow over the past year. While we are not out of the woods concerning COVID as of yet, there are some promising signs that are turning around. There is a famous Japanese proverb that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. While this past year has certainly seen our activity fall down, it has not deterred the will of the dancers and leaders to get up, quote, that 8th time, if you will. We are all familiar with the saying that says, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. I believe in the fortitude of our activity that we will endure anything that can and will be placed upon us. Actor Robin Williams once said in his movie, Patch Adams, you fight a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you win no matter what the outcome. I believe how all our organizations move forward from the virus is going to have to center on, quote, how we treat the person, how we treat our dancers, how we gather together as one uniformed organization to bring the leadership we have known forward and begin to provide the proper dance programs and support that our new dancers in our activity desperately need at this time. There has been constant talk this past year among callers and dancers from all over the world trying to decipher what our activity will look like once things return to normal. Many have said we most likely have to start over. Some have said we probably have lost 50% of our dancers. Many of us really don't have a crystal clear picture as of yet what the landscape will look like once the smoke clears. But what we will have, and what is still embedded in our DNA, is the desire to provide the best dancing programs we can to ensure that the dancers remain, that do remain, and that those who get to enter, that will provide them with a quality product. I'm not sure about you, but I'm not ready to concede the turmoil that has surrounded the activity this past year. Dancers, callers, cuers are very resilient when it comes to adversity. It is our human nature to be effervescent and positive when we go about our daily lives. It is these traits that we bring with us to this activity we so dearly love. It's our drive and our energy that will propel us to come out of our situation even stronger. So you may ask, where do we go from here? The future landscape of our activity will largely depend on how we perceive our actions moving forward as either status quo or decisive. Sometimes there are benefits to taking a few steps back, reevaluate a situation, begin to move forward with new and fresh ideas. One of these new ideas that has come out of this terrible situation is the fact that our activity requires us to finally recognize that we need or might need a shorter entry-level program, one which could unite the landing spot for new dancers. The Social Square Dancing, SSD, experimental, of course at the time it was experimental teaching lessons, it has now been officially voted in as an official Callerlab program. Teaching lessons has emerged as a serious and solid means to help amass a greater quantity of new dancers. Another teaching system that has gained some popularity is the condensed teaching method, or CTN. This has proven to be successful as well in some areas of the country. Efforts have been made throughout the past few years to come up with additional means in which to help grow the activity, and the individuals who have worked hard on these systems are to be commended for their efforts. Is SSD for everyone? Probably not, but it could give us another tool on our toolbox to reach new dancers and help perpetuate at least the belief that there are other means in which to reach our aspirations for a solid and rewarding activity. The beauty of Callerlab and our programs and our organizations is that they are tried and true and have been successful to varying degrees over time. Our activity is literally a worldwide activity. We must be cognizant of what other countries are doing, and we must never forget that we, as an organization, I'm obviously speaking about Callerlab, cannot impose our beliefs from one country onto another when it comes to beginner dance lessons or any dance program. And I'll stop for a minute and add to this that if you ever have the chance to go to Europe and dance on a vacation, they have a very strong basic program. And the United States does not really have a strong basic program. I can tell you, for most parts of the country, the word basic is a dirty word because people don't want to dance basic. Excuse me. They don't mind dancing mainstream. They don't want to dance basic. You go to Europe, and I get scheduled to call a dance. Their dance might be a basic tip, a mainstream tip, a basic tip, a plus tip, a basic tip, a mainstream tip. Basic is very important in parts of Canada and overseas. They take it seriously. They don't. I don't know how it works, but they get it to work. They teach their dancers basic, and they keep them there for at least a year, and then maybe they move them up. We just don't seem to have the patience in the States for that. And I'm not speaking about your specific area, because you're one of the few areas of the country that has a very strong mainstream program, and plus, but I'm just speaking really about mainstream. For those countries that are successfully using up the existing basic and mainstream programs, I commend you. Again, if it's not broke, don't fix it, as the saying goes. Unfortunately, we don't exist in a perfect square dance world, and it will take new and different programs moving forward to help assist those areas of the world that might need guidance and help. George Bernard Shaw once said, "Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." We are starting to see, quote, a mind change in some parts of the world in regards to a shorter time frame for beginner lessons. I cannot speak for the entire world, but I can see a cultural change within the United States when it comes to providing a quicker, quote, learn to dance program. For so long, we have been stagnant when it comes to recognizing the issues we are facing. The world is changing, and our activity needs to not only realize that, but also have the fortitude to make the necessary changes for a better tomorrow. Minds are changing, and with that will come a new and refreshed vision, an openness to admit individually we may not have the answers, but collectively we can come together to pursue a positive outlook. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it has shown just how vulnerable we are as human beings to something outside our control. Square dancing is no different than many of the activities we enjoy. All of these functions have been devastated. Square dancing has lost so many loved ones, either in our personal lives or within the activity. We have lost some great leaders, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of sending out sympathy cards, which I was. That's more Callerlab stuff, we'll skip over that. I believe the key to the future success of our activity is that we, as leaders, do need to come together. And there's leaders, we're all leaders in this one. This is a leadership conference, so everyone's included. And try as best to put aside our differences and begin to work together, just as the founding fathers of our activity believed in. Utilizing the programs we now have, or any future ones we might acquire, is important, but it is not the only venue that we will need in order to be successful coming out of COVID. Once again, I will quote George Bernard Shaw, who said, "Life isn't about finding yourself, life is about creating yourself." Through our history and our great leadership, all the way from Callerlab's beginning to our square dance beginning to your regional councils and activities, wherever you live, we have done a pretty good job of finding ourselves. I believe because of the shutdown we've had to endure the past year, we are now at the crossroad in which we have the opportunity to forge ahead and recreate ourselves with what could be long-lasting consequences, and hopefully for the better. We have the opportunity to create something positive, and it would behoove us to learn from our past mistakes in order to be successful at this crucial time. This creation is very much needed, and COVID, parentheses, unfortunately or fortunately, has provided for us this moment. How we deal with this opportunity moving forward is entirely upon us. Our strength, and along with Callerlab, square dancing is more than just a list of dance programs. Our organizations consist of the best and brightest individuals from all over the world, dancers, callers, and cuers. We share a common goal, to educate the public with our dancing that we understand and love. Our organizations have come a long way since their inceptions. We are no different than any other organization in regards to growth and changes. All organizations throughout our country have tripped and fallen down a few times, and we cannot nor will it ever be everything to everyone. I wish it were so. With perhaps some light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, we have this fantastic opportunity to establish perhaps a quote, a new beginning. We should welcome back with open arms all of our dancers and ensure that they have the best time of their lives since they last danced. I find it refreshing that there have been small parts of the world that has kept dancing. Unfortunately, the majority of us have not been so lucky. Of course, this was written back in March, so this is opening up a little bit more now. Now more than ever, we need to utilize the information that our brand new website, we have to be Callerlabs, or Where's the Dance, or any websites are available for everyone. There are hundreds and hundreds of articles on the Callerlab website, which, by the way, it's called the Knowledge Database. If you go to callerlab.org, it's not just for callers. There are hundreds and hundreds of articles on all types of square dance activity, and I encourage all of you in this room to check out the Knowledge Database. I also want to urge all of us to be thankful for what we've accomplished despite the setbacks we endured. We need to make use of not only the existing programs, but also any of the experimental teach sessions. And I say that should SSD become a formal program, and of course now it has, that you also could possibly look into that for your area. It might be something that could be of use. Every one of us shares a common goal, and that is to help our activity grow and prosper. We will never move forward if we keep looking back. I majored in secondary education English during college. I was a fond reader of many famous authors and poets. And with this, I'd like to leave you with a part of poet Alfred Lloyd Tennyson's poem, Ulysses. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and faith, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Square dancing will remain strong. And as we forge ahead with our efforts to become even stronger, I believe the activity, with all of us working together for the greater good, will not yield, but will be strong in will. From our past to our future, we shall remain one in dignity, honor, and strength. It is that strength that ultimately will define what square dancing will be. And that's the official end of the speech. But I wrote that because I wanted to bring about the past history of Callerlab, but also tie it into the pandemic. I wish I could give everyone a magic pill and say I've got the answer of what's going to make square dancing thrive again. And I'm not up here to sound doom and gloom, because it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, the clubs are up and running again, most of them. I'm hearing of some good crowds. I know some of the callers in the room have some fantastic programs that have been working. I think we are at a crossroad. I think in post-COVID, you know, this might have been, I hate to say it, but some people thought that it might have been a blessing in disguise, a chance to wash away and start fresh again. And there might be some truth into that. Nobody liked sitting on their couch for 15 months. I know I certainly did, and I watched more TV than I ever cared to. And it's boring. And I think we're all so used to going to dances, queuing or calling or going to meetings and federations and whatever. We have them all over the country, going to festivals. And then all of a sudden that just came to a stop. It just came to a stop. And I think in this area, I've always known the Pacific Northwest, the 4 or 5 or 6 times I've called up in the Washington area, you do have a strong mainstream program. I commend you for that, because in New England, we do mainstream, but it's like, okay, you did mainstream, so when can we take plus lessons? I mean, there's one club that graduates a class of beginners, and then they wait about, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks, and they start a new class, and they automatically just tell the ones who just graduated, okay, now you're going to go to the plus class, but you can come an angel, but stay for the plus class, and they just learn. I mean, they're not rock solid. They did a good year of dancing. So anyone who's ever danced in California, I don't have to look at what program I'm going to call for a club in California when I get a contract, because I already know what it is. If it's not higher levels that I'm aware of, or been booked for, or run myself, it's plus. There are no mainstream clubs in the state of California. None. But because of COVID, I was able to get on some Zoom meetings, and the Orange County Dancers Association, the president was on there one night, and she says that they are going to get the clubs together and almost mandate that all the clubs in Orange County try the SSD program. And that's a shock, because I felt sorry for those callers who have to teach beginner classes in California. And some of them are really good callers. And they say, Ken, if we don't teach the class in September all the way through plus, they'll replace me the next year. They don't care. And that's a problem. And it's not working, because you're getting mainstream, you're getting very weak plus dancers. They're not really plus dancers. They're barely mainstream dancers. But because the clubs dance plus, well, they have to dance plus this evening. Where else are they going to go? Our club dances plus, they have to go. So they're finally seeing maybe the light at the end of the tunnel. And let me talk a little bit about SSD. I don't know, has there been any interest in this area? Show of hands if anyone, any club you're hearing about might want to try SSD? Spokane area, okay. Mike, your club?
I didn't know about SSD until I think
Oh, the microphone, I'm sorry. Where are the rolling microphones?
I didn't know about this.
No, you need to be on the mic.
There.
Sorry, Mike. Hey, Mike, you need the mic.
Don't go on the recording.
I didn't even know what SSD was until I came to the college school. And we talked a little bit about it. Personally, I think it's a good idea. What better way to start social square dancing and get people to, transition into classes, and coming in, actually walking into your hall, and then being exposed to the mainstream and the plus, but at least they're in your hall. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, like I said, let me talk a little bit about SSD, the social square dancing. What a lot of people around the country have found is that, and again, I'm not speaking for your specific area. I have no right to say, because you can say this, well, not my club, we don't do it that way. I'm sure you don't. But in general, that we're not really becoming much of a social activity anymore, which is what we started out as. It's just how high can we climb through the programs, how more difficult can we learn to dance, different positions, it's all workshopping. And granted, I love calling all that stuff, and some of you came to the workshop yesterday, you know I do. But the feeling around the country was, we're not very sociable anymore. I know I can speak for my area. Years ago, after the dance, we'd all go out for pizza, or we'd go to somebody's house. And they don't do that anymore at all. It's like everyone goes their own way, they go home, tired. Of course, I get it. We're older, I'm older, I understand that. But when I hear about clubs that are holding a non-square dance, like a picnic, or they get together, you know, some of these clubs are very successful because they make the sociability part of the activity. And we've sort of gotten away from that. And the idea of the SSD program was to have more chances to have beginner classes during the course of the year. And it's sort of a standalone program, okay? You have all the Callerlab programs here that you dance. And SSD is off to the side because it's not a stepping stone to the next program. It's probably about 17 calls short of the full mainstream program. And the purpose of the program, if we could all really work it, that's easier said than done, is to have a class, teach them for about 10 to 12 weeks, keep them there, and then just dance the SSD program and just have SSD dances. And keep them there for a good year if you can. And then eventually if they want to move up, you move them up. Some people say, well, you know, we're a plus club. That's okay. Jerry Story, God rest his soul, who started all this was his baby, would tell people, okay, so on Saturday night you have your plus dance. That's fine, keep it. But what about like on every other Friday night or one Friday a month, you have an SSD dance. It's still your club. You still have your plus. The plus dancers can come to SSD. SSD can't go to a plus dance. SSD cannot go to a mainstream dance. But the purpose, this is what we're doing around the country for the most part, is we're plowing through mainstream. We're making weak dancers. Dancers are quitting because they get frustrated. Callers might not be picking up on it. Callers might not be experienced enough to make a mainstream dance interesting. These are all factors. I mean, I'm not picking on anybody in this room, because if there's ever been a mistake to make calling, believe me, I've made it. And I'm saying that we need strong callers who have the strength to want to just keep their dancers here and create the dances so other clubs will come. Other clubs, mainstream dancers, can come to your SSD dance, okay? If you've ever danced in the live music hall at the National, and you know, we get up there and you do a singing call. It's like one singing call after another. It's amazing. The band plays, and these people never sit down. It's like 3 hours of singing calls. And some people square up for all 3 hours on that cement floor. If you really think about it, the singing call figures most of us use, and I'm guilty of it too, is basically SSD. You know, it's just very basic stuff. You got the band playing behind you. You can't really hear yourself. You got a throng of, you know, about 50, 60, 70 squares in front of you, and everyone's moving around, and you don't really hear it like you would if you had just a speaker, and you just want to keep it really simple, okay? And one caller after another gets up there. They're basically calling an SSD type program. Very basic and very easy to dance. And that's really the purpose of SSD, it's a destination program. It's not a stepping stone. And the hard part we have in our activity is that we don't like, if the destination program isn't plus or mainstream or advanced, we don't like it. That's why basic doesn't work in our country, because nobody stops at basic. It's an ugly word. And yet you go to Europe and they look at you and say, oh, I'm a basic dancer. And like when I first went over there years ago, I'd say, oh, and they say, yeah, every other tip you're gonna call basic. And I started looking down at the list saying, oh, okay, I really limit myself here, you know? It's work. And I'm speaking to the callers out there right now that try calling a basic dance. You gotta do your homework. I don't care how long you've been calling, with rare exception in the room maybe, but it's work to make it entertaining, to make it fun, because you're limiting yourself, okay? And there's nothing wrong with limiting yourself. It's just that, unfortunately, in general, and I'm a caller, so I'm putting myself in the same bucket. Many callers are lazy. They really don't want to do. It's easier to call relay to Ducey and load the boat than it would be to teach, wheel arounds or split circulates or things like that, which are all part of a smaller microcosm, right? But if you can, we had fun yesterday afternoon. I enjoyed the dancers who danced, and I thought we had a good time. You learned something new. I kept it within the realm of what we were dancing, and it was fun. So it could be done, I guess is what I'm saying. So is SSD for everybody? No. If your club is thriving with a good mainstream class of 2 a year, that's fine. And that's another reason. Why do we always feel that we have to start our classes in September? I have somebody who used to say, well, it's National Square Dance Month. Okay.
Really?
You can start it in September. Why can't you start it quarterly? Why can't you do one in January and September? Why can't you do one in January, June, and October? It's a lot of work. For those of you who are club officials who run classes or class coordinators, it's a lot of work to run more than one class a year. But if you could try the SSD program and start a class in September, and 12 weeks later, keep them there and dance them there. Maybe in January you start another beginner's class, and you let the SSD people sort of quote angel the new people. And then when they go 12 weeks, you move them to the SSD, the original group. Now you got a bigger group. You keep them there. And there's the key, keeping them there. We're not very good at keeping our dancers down on the farm after they sing Paris because their friends are dancing Paris. Well, we went with our friend. They said, well, why don't you come and join us over here? We're going to start Jim Jones is starting a plus workshop. And, this is where you really need to be. Well, our friends are over there. We want to dance with our friends, so we're going to go to the plus workshop. There's no magic pill to stop something like that. You can't stop people from going to a program. You just can't do it. You want to keep everyone in. That's why SSD it's a pretty gutty program. You got to have guts to want to make it work. And if you really want to make it work, it can't be 1 or 2 callers or 1 or 2 clubs. Well, I shouldn't say it can't be. It could be. But overall, you're going to need the support of all the other clubs too. It's not for everybody. I don't recommend it for anybody. I just say it's another tool in Square Dancing's toolbox that can be used. If your club's having problems, taking a long time and you're losing dancers, I know in New England sometimes, we have the Christmas break. You go great guns. I got 6 couples, right? They came every week right up until the 3rd week of December, and they said, all right, we're going to take the next 2 weeks off. The holidays, people got parties, and we're going to start back in the 2nd week of January. 3 couples show up. We lose them. Then you call them and say, hey, this is Ken. We really missed you the other night at the lessons, and we hope to see you. Well, yeah, we're going to Florida. I get that a lot, especially in New England. They'll say, they'll come up to you like 8 weeks into it, and they're like doing a great job. And they're going, well, we're going to be going down to Florida for 4 months, and but will you start us up again when we come back? Sometimes they'll say, well, I'll try to find a caller down in Florida that's got a beginner's class, but in New England we get that a lot because of the cold. I don't know so much about here if dancers are flooded to Florida. But
Arizona.
all right, well, you got it then. You got Arizona. All right.
Yeah.
Has any caller in this room ever had a beginner couple come up to him and say, we're going to Arizona for the winter? Come on now. All right. Okay, so I don't feel so bad. But it happens. So the purpose of SSD was to say, all right, so we got to have a way to combat that. Because if you just say, oh, I just lost 3 out of 6 couples, well, I'll plod through with the other 3, and we'll wait all the way to next September to start another class. What are we waiting for? And especially a lot of the clubs, especially in the Northeast, they meet weekly anyway, because after the beginner class, then they have a plus review, or they might even do A1. So lots of times, many of the club members are coming on a weekly basis anyway. If you're physically meeting every week anyway, start another class, give it a shot. It's a lot of work. I know Dave says he's got a successful program he does once a month, right, on a Friday. He gets like 13 squares or something, and it's not SSD, but he's got the right concept where he says, yep, just come in, never learned to dance before, that's what the whole night's for. And Dave, where's the microphone so he can talk? What's your percentage you think of dancers that, he's right, Dave, raise your hand. What?
Did I have the right person or not?
What's your percentage you think of those dancers after one of those Friday fun nights that join a class and stay with the club?
I would say the percentage of the people that come and try it from the very beginning is probably pretty small, but that's not really the total goal of the program. It affords an opportunity for somebody that has never ever experienced square dancing to come in, try it, and they dance with the wind in their face all night long. We cover about, I'd say, 15 to 20 movements in an evening,
Sure.
somewhere around there. But all of those movements are things like couple circulates, California twirls, dive-throughs, pass-throughs,
Right.
rear lefts, wheel and deals. They're all hand-hold movements. So if I'm a brand new dancer and I have an experienced dancer holding my hand and the caller says, couple circulate, what's she gonna do? She's gonna take me by the hand and move me wherever I need to go, right? Wheel and deal, she's gonna bring me around to face the couple, and I say dive through, and she's gonna help me duck through that arch, or for the other person, she's gonna help me make that arch. I mean, we explain all of these movements as we go, but it's a very quick teach. For example, if I'm gonna teach California twirl, or if I'm gonna use California twirl, I gently grab one of the girls that's standing in front of the stage and bring her up and say, okay, California twirl is an arch, whoever goes through the arch, guy walks around. Everybody can do that. No, it's no big deal. Everybody gives it a try, and that's the end of the teach right there. The first sequence of the dance starts with stars. Everybody can figure out what a star is. Girls, step to the center, make a right hand star. Put your right hand up so all four right hands are touching, make a star, turn it. Boys, step to the center. Tell them who the head couples are. Head, step to the center. Side, step to the center. Head, step forward, face your corner, make a left hand star. Come home, square your set. By the time we finish, we've got a right hand star in the middle, left hand star with a corner, right hand star in the middle, Allemande left and promenade, and I've got a singing call figure. Do a singing call, we finish with a line dance, so on and so forth. There are people that come on a fairly regular basis, and that's all the further they go. The key to the whole thing is your classes, my classes, all of the classes in Mount Baker Single come to that first Friday dance because it's a dance that they can do everything at. There are no star tips. We don't do any mainstream sets. We don't do any round dances. If we do a round dance, it's a round dance that we teach that everybody can learn. Not everybody does them, but they have the opportunity to do it if they want. So the whole evening is geared towards this is a dance, and enjoy as much of it as you want, sit out as much as you want, and we'll start with 13 squares a lot of time. We've never had a dance smaller than 10 squares.
Nice.
We've had 15 squares on the floor, and when we get to 15, the parking lot is full, and we have seen cars driving. You've seen it when there. Cars drive in, they can't find a parking place, and they drive out. When we end the dance, it's not uncommon. It's a long dance. We start at 7:30. We end at 10:30.
Wow.
And there are many times at the end of the dance we still have at least 10 squares on the floor. Not very many people can say that. So to answer your question, no, we don't keep those brand new people that come in constantly. But they occasionally come back and visit. I had a young family once that their kids were taking square dancing with me in one of the schools that I got. The kids brought mom and dad down. They came almost every dance for that first year. Something happened and other things came in place for them, but they enjoyed it for, 6 months, 7 months,
Thank,
So,
we
yeah.
have a question in the back. Thank you, Dave. So see, Dave's thinking out of the box. How many of us, and I say me too, when I say us, how many of us are really thinking outside the box?
How do you get people there?
Peyton?
I'll tell you how it started, because the first Friday Fun Fest actually started as a level dance. Well, first I went to the club and said, we need to have a level dance for our students, and it needs to be a dance that's consistent. We do it every single month, and it's part of your club program. It's not a special dance that you do once or twice a year. It's a destination dance that people can come to. So it originally was set up to where it would start in the September classes, and it would track the September classes through. And I say track them through because I teach totally different than any other caller, probably any other caller in the whole United States. But I have the good sense to know that I'm going to call a dance that's a whole lot less material-wise than what I've taught in my classes. And I got a lot of flack because I never ever advertised the movements that we're going to go through. A lot of clubs, but we're going to do movements 1 through 36 or whatever. Well, if you advertise 1 through 36 and your students haven't got to 36 yet, most callers say you can't go to that dance. Well, we didn't advertise it that way because we programmed the dance to watch what the floor was doing, and if they couldn't do a movement, then I just chopped that one off my list. We didn't workshop it, we just plain didn't do it. And it just became a very, very successful dance in that part. So when we got to January, some of us had January classes starting. So my idea of that was we would do like a lot of clubs do. Some clubs do plus 1 set, and they do mainstream 1 set and whatever. So I thought, well, I'll do that. Not a good idea. It's not a good idea in a regular square dance program, and it's not a good idea in a level dance program, because the majority of our people that were there at that dance at that point were the January students. So here you go, 2/3 of the floor sitting out, okay, while 1/3 dances. So I said, well, okay, I'll do every third tip that way. And then it finally got to the point where I'm going to just call the material for the January classes. Then the next thing that happened is they came up to me and said, my granddaughter is coming in from college. It wasn't necessarily them, but I'm using them for an example. Can we bring them, and if they bring them, can you do something for them so that they get a chance to dance? I said, sure, bring them. We'll get them on the floor and we'll dance them. And the program dropped to what they were capable of doing as I was teaching through. And the next month somebody else said, my niece is coming in from college or whatever. So the dance eventually became a no experience necessary dance, because the dancers themselves created that program. And that's how we get people into the program. You say, hey, I'm going to a dance tonight. Come join us. You don't need to know anything about it. You drag your friends there. And the first thing they do is they walk in the door and we ask people to raise their hand and say, if you've never been to the hall before, never square dance, raise your hand. And they do. We all give them a great big round of applause, and I say, make sure you get those people in your square. And that's where it goes from there. So people recruit them. We don't advertise it, they just bring them in.
See, that's what I say, thinking outside the box. There's an old saying that I'm sure many of you heard, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. Square dancing has that around its neck sometimes, because it's, how many times have you sat in club meetings through the years and they'll say, well, this is the way we do it because that's the way it's always been done, Well, why can't we paint the wall yellow, and why does it always have to be gray? I mean, because it's always been gray, and Jim Smith started this club 45 years ago, and it's still gray, and this is what we do. It's like, times have changed, the world's changed, and I see my friend back there smiling because she's a rebel with a cause. And, but I mean, times have changed, and square dancing is making great strides to try to change with it. Obviously, being locked down for about 15 months, we've all learned to use Zoom. Zoom two couple dancing or whatever. How many have done two couple dancing the past year through Zoom? Okay, I called a little bit. Two couple isn't for me. I did call 1 3-hour dance for a group in St. Louis. They had a full square in the basement. I happen to know the dancers because I go there every year to do a weekend for them. So it was very comfortable. But I'm not a two couple guy personally. It's just not my bag. But I know a lot of dancers did, and that's good because it gave them a chance to stay connected. And the good thing about Zoom was, you know, you could see people from Japan and Germany and see your friends from around the country, and that's really cool. So technology has sort of kept us together. But now that we're coming out of it, we should leave no stone unturned, okay? I'm not saying just change for the sake of change, because people don't like change. None of us like change. But change is inevitable. And I think we all have to take a look. Probably too early to tell in any of our areas, you know, coming out of COVID, because I know in our area, most of the clubs are not starting their classes until September. So we got a couple of months left, but what's wrong if your club's only doing one class in September every year and you don't like the quantity that you're getting? Try 2 classes a year. You like the idea of maybe doing an SSD? You think you have support of your caller? Does your caller understand the SSD program? The good thing about SSD program is if I was a brand new caller and had never taught a class before, there's a document about this thick that it says, week 1, these are the calls you teach. Week 2, these are the calls you teach. It tells me everything I need to teach, but not only that, but it gives me modules that I can read if I wanted to of the calls. And each tip builds upon the calls that you taught. And then it gives me singing call figures strictly for those calls on that given night. It's all the work's been done for a caller when it comes to SSD. It's already done. If you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. But you might want to have your club behind you. You got to work together like a hand in a glove. You can't, if you're a caller and you want to do an SSD program and there's no club that will work with you, you really want to do one, as long as you're not impeding on some club nearby or their night of dancing, start your own class, okay? It could be caller run, but if you're a club that says, we're not happy with what's been going on, we need to change, something needs to change or we're not going to exist. You know, somebody told me of many of these, not all, some, maybe many of these clubs up around here don't exist anymore. So if your club is up there and it exists, okay, we will continue to do something that's going to keep it up there instead of as an ex-club. There's nothing wrong with doing multiple lessons. 10, 12 weeks is enough to keep people dancing. Like I said, I wish I had a magic bullet, magic pill we can all take. It's still too early coming out of COVID. We don't know everything yet. I think some of the people in this room have a good idea what's happening with their clubs, but around the country, we just came back from the National in Jackson. They had 1,822 dancers. What does the National normally get? Between 37 and 4,200 what they've been getting the last 3 or 4, 5, 6 years. So I commend the convention for putting it on. Nobody wore masks. You could if you want, but everybody it was like being 2 years ago in Atlanta, where before COVID, it was just natural. Everyone was just walking around like we are now and seeing your old friends. It was great. The numbers were down, but we expected them to be down because COVID was just, the CDC guidelines were just starting to lift some of the regulations. And so Jackson sort of took it on the chin, knowing that it is what it is, but somebody had to lead the way. And I commend them for that. And like I said earlier, I commend you for running this, because you could have easily just said, no, give it another year, because I know next year things will be back to normal. Knock on wood, we don't have any, we don't go backwards. But it's hard work to keep this activity going. When I got into this activity in the 70s, square dance callers, never, at least in my area, never were involved in recruiting dancers. Never. There were so many clubs and so many dancers. You just showed up and they came in through the door and you taught the classes. It was never on the mind of callers, that I can at least speak for New England, to actually try to recruit. Didn't have to do it. And then as the numbers started to go down in the 80s, and they started to go down in the 90s, and then we hit the year 2000 and things were getting worse and worse, callers associations, callers had to start getting actively involved. Callerlab has been actively involved for the past 20 years or so of trying to find ways to recruit new dancers. And so now everybody has to be on board. Can't be just up to the clubs anymore. Those days are gone. And how many, in the show of hands, of your club hold more than one square dance class a year? Okay. How many are thinking of possibly holding more than one? One, two. No, Bob? One? One. Okay. Well, if the ones who are doing one class a year, if it's working for you, and you're getting a good sized crowd, and you're retaining them, then good for you. Then that's fine, because there's no rules set in stone here that you must do this, you must do that. But again, if it's not working, you might want to change it up a little bit. And it's going to take work on everyone's part. And that's why one of the quotes I said from Bernard Shaw was, if you can't change your mind, you can't change anything. And how many times have we seen people, even ourselves, sometimes we just don't want to change our mind. You know, we believe what we believe, and you know, we're all stubborn to a degree. And but I think those days are over with. I think, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. What do you know? You don't know what you don't know. I like to say that lots of times when in my sales job, I'll be talking to a prospect and I'll say about my company, and I'll say, well, you don't know what you don't know. They say, well, I don't know your company. I say, that's right, you don't. So why not give it a shot? So we need to be more open-minded. We need to work together, and we need new blood. We need new leaders too, not just callers. We need callers. I always hear that everywhere I go. We need callers. We need callers. I said, what, are they all dying? Well, some of them are, and some are retiring. And coming out of COVID, we've lost a lot of callers too. Some good callers have just said, I'm done. I don't want it anymore. I think back now of all the running around and the driving and the craziness. I've had 15 months to stay home. Some callers have said they spent more time with their grandchildren because they never had the time to do that. They've done more work around the house. And they just say, I'm done. And they hang it up. So we need, and probably the same thing with cuers too. I know in New England, we're starving for cuers. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough cuers. They need to start cure schools. Seriously, I hear they're out there, but I don't really pay attention to them. But we need cures in our area. Sounds like you have a lot of cures in this area. I don't know, but there were a lot at the dance last night. But the bottom line is, if you're going to continue doing what you're doing, if it's not working, then you need to make changes, okay? It's like a company that's losing money every year, and the graph chart goes like this, and they're going in the red. Well, something's got to be done to turn it around, or you're not going to have a company. And we're not going to have an activity if we don't turn it around. It's not all doom and gloom. I don't like to come across as doom and gloom, because there's a lot of good going on around the country. There are clubs, there are areas that are having success. So Dave is one shining example of success in this area. If he can do it, then you know, other callers can do it if they put their mind to it. And like he said, he started that program with a different mindset, but it was the dancers who changed it. And so all of a sudden you get 13, as a caller, if I'm getting 13 squares one Friday a month, I'm not going to change what I'm doing, because if you change it, what's going to happen? You're going to lose some people. And that's the problem is, stay with the tried and true if it's working. Try SSD if you want to. A lot of work. You know, running 2-3 classes a year is a lot of work on the caller and on the club. But you know what? If you're graduating 10, 12, 15, 20 couples over the course of 3 classes or 2 classes, well, that's 10 or 12 or 15 couples you probably wouldn't have gotten. Maybe you would have gotten 5 of them if you did 1. Now you got 15 or 20. And the other key thing I want to leave you with is, it's not just bringing them into the activity. It's a retention problem. We have a retention problem. We get them in the activity, and for some reason we lose them. And there's millions of reasons why you lose them. It can have nothing to do with square dancing. They could all of a sudden have a life-changing death or illness in their family. Something could happen with their job. They might have to move away. Things that we would have no control over as a square dance club. But there are things that we sort of stumble ourselves and cause our own problems. Caller might be teaching too fast. Caller might not recognize that John and Mary Smith are having troubles. Caller might be teaching, I don't know, too hard. And I'm just blaming it on the caller. I'm just saying, as a caller, I've heard all these before, so I can tell you these things really happen. And we have to be, maybe we're not socializing outside of Tuesday night lessons. Just, have somebody say, we're going to have a picnic next Saturday over our house, and everyone's invited. And, you don't have to bring anything. Just show up, bring a lawn chair. We're just going to, we're going to maybe play cornhole, or we're going to play darts or something. We're just going to talk. And that's it. You don't have to square dance at all. In fact, it's probably better you don't square dance. Make it sociable. People are people outside of square dancing. They like to do other things besides square dancing. And go the extra mile. It's like that Staples button that says easy, and you press it, it goes, that was easy. Now I have one of them at my caller school, and in the first night, I always hit it, and I go, it's not easy. we don't make 4-day wonders of you in caller school, okay? Nowhere in the syllabus I hand out does it say it's easy. If it's easy, everybody'd be doing it. So retention is not easy. It takes team effort. And it takes people you gotta really like people to be in this business. You really do. So getting them in is one thing, keeping is another. Hold their hand, pick them up, bring them to a dance. Say, hey, the club's going over to dance to, Mike's calling a dance next Friday night at Gateway Swingers, because I think they're still in existence, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because somebody had that cool badge last night. So Mike's calling it Gateway Swingers Friday night. We're going to have a caravan there. We're going to go. How many want to drive? If you need a ride, we'll pick you up, or we'll meet you at Center School and everyone in the parking lot, and we'll figure out, and we're all going to go. Meet us there at 6:30, and we'll drive over to the dance. We used to do caravans like that in New England all the time. In blizzards. I remember we had 6 cars one day go in a blizzard driving to a dance, and the dance was held. But that was then. Nowadays, it's like they see 6 snowflakes. All right, John, cancel the dance. No, cancel the dance. All right, get on the internet right away, email everyone, call the caller, call the cure, it's canceled. Now it's like, they're not going out, they see 6 snowflakes, they're done. But we used to literally drive in caravans of cars through blizzards to go to a dance. And it's just a different world we live in. I'll take some questions. We need the mic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Whoever's first.
Oh, I did.
Oh, thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And I appreciate everything you've said, because what you've talked about is what's going on in Olympia. Nancy Reha has taken it upon herself, she is a caller's wife, to make sure she has everybody's email and phone number. And she sends out, she was doing weekly blogs to all of these people to remind them of the dance, of the lessons, of something happening, going on. She has, in my opinion, created that continuity that we needed. Our organization, the Olympia Area Square Dancers, have the lessons. They're not held by the clubs. It's through the association. But because of that, we're able to hold 4 classes a year. Wow. They start on a Thursday, and that Thursday class goes for 10 weeks. And then the following month, they start again a new class on Monday. And so the Thursday people can go to the Monday class if they want, or they can just continue with Thursday. And they're all 10-week classes. Then that's for the first hour and a half. So they go from 6:30? I don't know. 6:30 to 8. And from 8 to 9, then they move into the next 17 moves, which is part of the mainstream program. So we have also a basic club in Olympia, which means that's all they do that night. Those classes can go to that dance. They're called through that program that those people are learning, and they continue to go through that. They can stay in that basic program as long as they want, which is what you were talking about. Don't push them.
Right.
And I just think that it has worked for us, and we were at one time having 4 couples in a class, and that was about 7 years ago, and now we're having dancing on Thursday night, 13 squares.
Give them a big hand. Look, Patricia up front here, right here. See, it can work, but it's work, isn't it? It's a lot of work. You don't get something for nothing.
So I wanted to affirm what you said about needing more lessons per year, because I am often asking people to join. Oh yeah, and lessons don't start until September.
Right.
And so, like I said in my speech, keep a log of those people. But people aren't necessarily free in September. They might be free in June or whenever. So I would like to see more dances, lessons offered more often.
Yeah, and that's a big mindset that we need to change. It's like we can't have tunnel vision that it's got to be September. If you got a group of people ready to go in March, start them. While it's hot, while the going's good. Yes.
I want to shift to just a little different attention, and that's the social aspect of this. One of my favorite comedians is George Carlin, because he did a skit on oxymorons, jumbo shrimp as an oxymoron. Well, one of the biggest oxymorons I see these days is social distancing. I saw it last night at the end of the tips. Remember when we all used to shake hands and thank each other? How many people last night avoided doing that? And this is, to me, one of the big problems of the day. One of the things I appreciate about Dave's thing, he's talking about doing couple moves together. It's that touch that makes them bond to each other. Tricia and I were talking a little bit last night. She's an avid square dance photographer. That's my hobby. And I noticed in looking at my picture where people are smiling the most is when they're about to contact someone else. Alamand left is one of the biggest moves for people smiling that I've ever seen in my 20 years of shooting square dance pictures. I'm the person in my club nobody recognizes without a camera in front of my face. So I think that's a big deal. The other thing socially that we do in our club, there were Samina Squares in Kirkland, we host something that we learned here actually a few years ago, and it's called Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And we have 4 or 5 people who are willing to be hosts, and then everybody puts their name in a basket, and they go to dinner at one of these houses. Nobody who does the dinner knows who's coming, and nobody who goes to dinner knows where they're going until they get their little message of where to go. We charge a fee for this. It's a little fundraiser, and we try to rotate that. But it's a great way to sit there and talk with people that you don't normally get to talk with, and you find out who these people in your club really are. We found out one night that one of our friends that we had known in square dancing for a long time was actually stuck in Alaska for some time out in the wilderness, and he was virtually out of touch for more than a week. I wouldn't have known that otherwise. But it's a great way of retention also, because as soon as our students get in a class, they're one of us. They're not students, they're part of our club, and they're offered to participate in our activities, social activities especially, without reservation.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and it's a good mindset. He brought up a good point. As soon as they start dancing, they're not a beginner. They're part of the club now. And if you're going to have a social event, I like that dinner thing. Can I get in there? Make sure that I go to one who's cooking Italian that night. Questions?
Just a second. Reminder, Linda wants name and console for the recording and records or notes or?
Oh, yes, make sure your name and where you're from and what you do.
Sorry, I don't know everybody.
That's it. Question, well, Mr. Harry, we know you.
It's not really a question, it's a little different concept, I think. And I'll tell you right up front that I'm not a big fan of the SSD program, at least not for our area, because mainstream is so strong here in our area, and I see that program as becoming a real confusing program for us here. But what I would like to see, and I probably will, when I walk into Mount Baker Council, they look at me and go, here comes that harebrain with another harebrained idea, but some of them work. But I'd like to approach Mount Baker and try a different philosophy on things. And that would be, well, for one thing, I teach for 3 clubs in the area up there. I teach Whirlybirds, Happy Hoppers, and Skagit Squares. Whirlybirds and Skagit Squares offer 2 starting sessions for lessons. So we start in September, well, we started in October this year. And Whirlybirds will start their second one in February, and the other one will be in January. So what I'm going to do with that first session of dances or lessons is all we're going to do is the basic program. And so we're going to have to create a program, a dance program for those people to go to while they're waiting to learn the rest of the mainstream program. But what I'm going to do with the council is I'm going to propose, say, Do's and Dolls do a basic program once a month. It could be an added dance to their dancing program, or it could be one of their nights of dancing, whatever they want to do. We'll take your club, and you do basic 1. And basic 1 is the first column of the basic program. So when and make it a monthly dance. Whirlybirds will have their no experience necessary dance. So at the very beginning of the teaching session, all of those students can come to Whirlybirds for that no experience necessary dance. When they get through that first column of movements, the basic 1 list, they can go to your dance and they can dance there forever on that whatever night they want to dance. When they get through the basic program, they can go to your club's dance and dance for as long as they want. When they get done with the whole mainstream list, they can go to any one of the clubs and dance. But there is a stopping point for each one of those levels of the of the mainstream program, basic mainstream lists, where people can go and dance. And if we play our cards right and make it work the way it should, those dances would continue on forever. And I'm somebody that doesn't do well at mainstream, but I'm really comfortable with basic 1, so I'm going to dance with them whatever night they do it. Or you're really comfortable with basic, but you're not comfortable with mainstream, you're dancing with them. And you're not comfortable with any of that, you're dancing with me at the first Friday Fun Fest, There's a place for everybody to dance.
Right.
And we're all going to be successful with that type of a program because we're going to keep those dancers that go to Arizona in the wintertime. I have to tell you a funny story about that off the track. Way back when I was teaching for Whirlybirds in the beginning, we were dancing 10 squares and people on our class nights back then. Half of them were students. And in January, I had a couple call me they were coming up from Arizona. They had taken square dance lessons down there and wanted to continue on. Is it okay if we dance with you guys? We've already gone through the majority of the mainstream lesson. I said, fine, I'd love to have you. So they came to the class, and my students are literally carrying them through the movements because they have no clue what mainstream is. Off they're back to Arizona the next year. They come back the next season, we're plus dancers.
Oh.
And we're still literally carrying them through our
I've seen that many times.
brand new program. Anyway, I think if we put a program like this together in Mount Baker Council and in your councils, I think we can really turn square dancing around and really, really grow.
So let me clarify again, I did say earlier, I'm not pushing SSD on your area, because I did already acknowledge that I know you have a strong mainstream program. But I wanted to bring you up to speed on where it stood, that it, since March, since the speech, is officially been voted in by the Callerlab membership. So it's a standalone program. It's not necessary to anybody in this room to ever use it if you don't want to use it. No one would ever no one's saying, I'm not standing up here saying, you have to use it. No, you don't, because you have a strong mainstream program. And like Dave said, breaking it down into plus one or, basic one or basic two, if you could do that, then you wouldn't have the need for this type of a program. Unfortunately, not every part of the country is as strong in mainstream as the Pacific Northwest. There are areas of the country that desperately need this type of a program. So please don't misconstrue. I am not up here stating you have to use it. I'm just educating everybody in this room the status of the program. You got a question?
Okay, again, name and council, please.
Ron Wolcott. Let me see, where am I from this week? I'm from Southwestern Council, I guess, this week. So. Ken, I have to regress a little bit.
Sure.
When I was chairman of Ritucci, and I went to Callerlab, which they interface all the time. The particular year that I went, we had a huge discussion about getting into the basic program. And as you know, Saturday night, they always have a dance at Callerlab. So they decided that we were going to have a basic dance, okay? Well, the interesting thing about it was, as we all know, we have all the national callers, and all the national callers are, you know, they go to Ritucci. They could not call a basic dance.
Oh, I know.
Okay?
You're right.
It caught them off guard, okay? And I guess my point is, in order to have any program work, whether it's the basic or mainstream or plus or advanced, your caller has to work at it. And if you're going to have a successful basic program, your caller is going to have to learn all of those basic moves and all of the things they can do with the basic program. I can remember Daryl Clendenin telling me one time, and Daryl's out of Portland, he said, I can call a better basic dance than anybody can call a better plus dance. And we'll have people that'll have more fun at my basic dance than they will at their plus dance on the thing. And he had learnd the program enough and worked at it. And one of the things that happens in our Olympia area for our over Lacadoe, the biggest dance that we have at Lacadoe are lessons. You know, it's not unusual for us to have anywhere from 10 to 15 squares on the floor, beginning night, every night at lessons on the thing. Glenn, we had a team of callers that were teaching, okay? We're not just one caller. They had to learn how to work with basic. And then when our club decided to have one basic dance every month, so that these people would always have a destination, our caller again had to learn how to call that basic dance and go. And I guess my question to you is, Ken, is last night, how many basic moves do you think you used last night in the dance? Okay, that's a good challenge, because I've heard a lot of people talk about, I go to a dance and somebody has actually analyzed what was used.
Sure.
And over 80% of the moves are basic.
All right.
Okay? That's my comment. I think the comment again that I'm working with is, if you decide to go with your club, you need to have a real discussion with your caller. Because callers and queuers, me included, on the thing, we have a tendency to want to gradually move up, learn something new, challenge the dancers, okay? And sometimes we need to be shoved back down.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
it's hard. I mentioned earlier, it's hard to call basic dance. Daryl's probably one of a few that can do a great job. But let's put it this way. Like I tell all the students at my caller schools, I said, if you're going to work a program, you better do your homework first. Even for the experienced callers, if you decide I said, I'm going to do a basic 1 class. Well, take a good look at that basic 1 list and start writing some modules and choreography for it, unless you think you're good enough to wing it. But, or basic 2, or SSD, or mainstream, whatever it is, and work that. There's a great sheet out there this is more for callers, called Analyze a Call. And you get it off the Callerlab website. And it's a lot of work. You fill it in for each call on the basic program or mainstream or whatever program, and then are you, at the end of the call, are you facing people? What hand availability do you have? Which way are you facing? Where could you use it? And if you could fill out that Analyze a Call sheet for every call, you're going to learn those calls a lot quicker than trying to just wing it. But you make some good points. It's hard. I mean, last night I tried to stick to a lot of basic. I did a lot of basic, but I did some mainstream. Certainly didn't want to go over that. But in the workshop yesterday, I tried to break down some of our basic calls and sort of show them in a different way that could be interesting. Sort of like what, a professional caller would do with a basic 1 or 2 program. You don't need Load the Boat and Relay to Doocy to make a dance fun. You just have to know how to call it, or how to get the dancers through it, or how to help her. Again, no matter what you call, if I can't get the floor through doing it, then I'm not successful. If you're not successful, I'm not successful. Nobody wins. Any more questions?
There's an entity, I'm sorry, Lee Barnhart, Samina Squares. There's a tavern actually in Seattle called the Tractor Tavern that has square dancing frequently. That I'm aware of. There's no organization that goes with it except the tavern. And they draw crowds you wouldn't believe. And so they must be teaching or doing it every night. I don't know how involved it gets, and I don't even know what the retention rate is, but they have big crowds a good portion of the time. Number 2, I'm a big fan of Dave Harry. He does something that I really admire, and that is he teaches kids. And he goes into the middle schools and teaches square dancing as part of the physical education program, I understand. And he invited our club to come dance one night. These kids about gave us a heart attack. They can dance like you wouldn't believe, and the smiles that you see among these 13 and 14-year-olds, it's really fun watching it because the boys are afraid to touch the girls, and it's really an interesting program.
Nothing's changed.
But he called it Plus Tip once, and those of us that were in the square with these people, we were heavy breathing after we were done. We almost fell down. The third part of that is that way back a long time ago, this used to be held in Kashmir, at Fairgrounds in Kashmir. Jerry Junk called the dance, and it suddenly dawned on me at the end of the dance, he hadn't gone through half of the square dance program, the mainstream program, and yet everybody was smiling and had a good time afterwards. And there was a person we knew at the time who was kind of a little bit of a snob in this field. And I went up to him, I said, did you notice that Jerry didn't call anything over this particular move? And he goes, no, I didn't. And everybody was having a good time.
Man, he's a true professional. We have a question up front here. These are in the expensive seats.
My name's Roger. I'm with Central Area at the time. And also one bigger council. We've all got more than one club. Do you guys understand that between Mount Baker Council and Spokane Council, that there are a lot of clubs that are 70 miles apart from one club, and possibly 2 callers that can get to those clubs? How about we address that?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that, because I don't live around here. You know, somebody says I'm in Wanichi or Watachi or whatever it's called. I know what you screw that up. I knew it screwed up. And then I'm over in Kirkland, and then, well, I'm way over in Yakima. I go, oh, okay. Well, where's that from, like, I don't know, Seattle? But, yeah, that's, the rural areas are tough, and they're tough all over the country. Lack of callers, lack of clubs. If the dancers are gonna dance, they know they gotta go at least 70 miles, 80 miles. I was told this weekend, it's nothing for a couple to drive an hour and a half to go to a dance. In New England, we used to be so spoiled because you could probably put 5 of the 6 New England states in the state of Washington, you know? But there were hundreds and hundreds of clubs, so it would be nothing for the next town to have 5 dances going on a Friday and Saturday night, and next door it'd be another 5 Friday, but we had the dancers to support it. Now, it's like, well, the territory's gonna be like a postage stamp, and all the clubs are dying out, and the next club might be 45 minutes away. And they go, oh, I'm not going that far. But see, they're spoiled. But out here, I can see where you look, either you drive 70 miles or you don't dance. The other thing is, I've seen in some parts of the country that have rural areas that maybe a new caller, it's usually a new caller, but maybe a caller starts a club somewhere in between. And now they got 35 miles instead of 70. And there's nothing more exciting than trying to start new clubs. Again, that takes work. It's hard, you know? But maybe a new caller will start a new club, and the experienced callers in this room will be a mentor to them and say, I'll help you get started. I'll help you, you know, come an angel. You can come and watch how I teach my class, and I'll help you every step of the way. But it takes more than 1 or 2 individuals to start a club. I don't have an answer about how you can densely populate. Normally, the bigger cities have more of the clubs, and I gotta admit, if you live out if you live outside in a rural area, it's gotta be tough. I don't have the answer for that, but that's an issue, and maybe something can be done by the people in this room to try to promote some new clubs somewhere in between, you know, the places. I wish I had an answer for you. I don't. Mike? Oh, sorry, dear.
This is Sharon Boggs, Blue Mountain Council for Shufflers. And that's one of the other things too, that we have lessons once a year is we have agriculture. And some of those guys run on their tractors all night long because of lights, you know, they have lights on their tractors. So yeah, summertime, we do shut down for summer because people are out farming.
Right.
That's tough, and that's all over the country too. Of farmers, they can't get the dances that much. They have to shut down. But you know, I always see them. They don't quit the activity. So God love them. They're still there. Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Small with the Spokane Area Council, coming to a club near you soon. A lot of my mentors who've been calling for a long time, they make a lot of the same comments, and I think I understand why things have been broken up. But I keep hearing this a lot. Well, back when we learned how to square dance, we just learned how to do it all. And they still to this day don't understand why we have basic, mainstream, whatever. After sitting in here, I think I understand. But are there any benefits of just learning it all at once?
When you say learning it all, I mean learning.
Well, there was no distinction between the mainstream and like plus. They learned it all. They just said we just learned how to square dance.
Well, yeah, and back in the 50s and 60s, before 1974, when Callerlab was formed and came out with formal program names, there was no, basically what you did in the 60s is you would learn the steps to the singing call, to the song, you know, and that's how they danced all night long. But then all of a sudden, choreography came into play, and it got to be more common, and more calls were being written. And Callerlab finally was formed in '74 because what was happening was, as great as you think the activity was doing then, it was starting to go down because more and more calls were being written. It was getting harder and harder for callers to comprehend that and then start to pass it on to dancers, and they weren't doing a good job. So I wasn't in the beginning of Callerlab. They formalized and said we need to standardize the programs. So if you live in Washington State but you want to travel to Alabama for a weekend, you can go to a dance and they can dance. You can dance what they're calling. So I guess the answer to your question is it easier? I don't think, there is no answer to that. We can't really go back anymore. It is what it is. It's been that way since the mid-70s. The rise and fall, people will say, well, you know, square dancing was big before we had programs, and Callerlab ruined it all, and everything. I said, well, I don't think Callerlab ruined it all. In my speech that I left out, I admitted that Callerlab has made errors through the years, because like any organization, they have. They didn't have all the answers. But a group of callers got together to form and standardize. Because I remember when I started to dance, before the list came, you'd go to a dance and the caller would workshop, I don't know, flip the doodle. And then you'd never hear flip the doodle again. Then you go to the next night to another call and they'd say, follow the yellow brick road, which, by the way, is a call. But it's like at a really high level. And so you'd learn follow the yellow brick road. And you'd never hear it again. And dancers started getting frustrated, saying, well, why are we learning these calls? Because the third tip of the night was always workshop tip. That was the standard, you know. And the fourth tip or the fifth tip was hot hash, which today some people still can't define. What's hot hash? Easy material fast or harder material slow? You ask 10 callers, you'll get 10 answers. But seriously, but the third tip was always workshop tip. And lots of times the traveling national callers would come through, I can speak for New England, and they would teach follow the yellow brick road or hit the wall or whatever. And then you'd never hear it again. And it was sort of getting frustrating for the dancers. So Callerlab says we're going to start to standardize the programs so people can dance not only within the country, but worldwide. You go to Sweden or Denmark, you want to go to a mainstream dance, you know what's on the program? You can dance. So it's done a lot of good, but it's not perfect. But I don't ever foresee the activity going the other way. Questions before we wrap up? Right up front?
Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay.
We've got several.
All right.
All right, Latricia Hatch, Central Puget Sound Council. I wanted to address the social aspect about touching for the person that spoke about touching. I know that in Kevin Tomeyer's KTs that we are hoping, at the time when we were dancing with them, to help the whole country, if possible, start doing the hands in versus hands wrapped around people. As a matter of, you know, in the Northwest, we're all very concerned about touching people. We don't want to make people uncomfortable. And I certainly appreciate not wrapping my hands around somebody's sweaty back. And so I'm very grateful for the hands in and we've actually, you know, Yellow Rock, Kevin is very much against yellow rocking, and I'm so grateful for that. You know, as a new dancer, having somebody wrap their arms around me wasn't comfortable, as well as being picked up and swung around at nationals and at state this past couple of weeks. 3 people picked me up and swung me around, and I didn't want to be picked up and swung around. So.
Yeah, and I don't know about you callers, and I literally have not called Yellow Rock probably in about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It never even comes to mind anymore. It's just, used to be a big thing in the 70s, and you know, it was what it was. I mean, you can't change the past. It had its purpose, and it's there if somebody wants to teach it and show it, but I don't even think of the word Yellow Rock anymore. Questions? Over here again.
Georgine, Southwester Council, Georgine Wilcock. I just want to make a comment when we were talking about how often do you start lessons, and you know, it's October and we just already started lessons and the next class isn't going to be till next September, and in the meantime the guy's gone bowling and fishing and hunting, and I don't have time for square dancing. Brett Maudsley was here as one of our keynote speakers one year, and his ending comment was, the candy store has got to be open more than 1 day a year.
Oh, yeah.
And that stuck in my brain for when we wanted to have more than one set of lessons a year. And yeah, it's tough. Bob started them in Spokane. He started a September class, and then they started a January class. And that was helpful there because you could say, for us, yeah, our September classes started, but we got one starting in 3 weeks. And so that was helpful to be able to keep that retention of that dancer interested. And the other thing is we dance with a lot of Midwesterners in the winter time. And their philosophy in dancing, when you were talking about distances between clubs and how to get to the nearest dance, is do not drive farther than the dance is long. In other words, if it takes you 2 hours to go to the dance, you better have a 2.5-hour dance.
That's a good point, never thought of that. That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Ray Huber, and I don't know, I'm from Moses Lake. I'm not a caller and, leader of the club, but there's something to be said for the consistency. I mean, new ideas and starting several times a year is great, but I traveled around a lot for work. I couldn't be at my home club, and so I would get to another club, go in there to lessons, and they had started also in September, and we're right at the same place where I was learning. So consistency for a lot of years has worked. I mean, it's kept people around, people that travel when you get there, and it's mainstream. Everybody knows what mainstream is, it's consistent. And this new, what is it called, SSD?
Yeah.
I mean, if it takes off around the country and it's working, then it's something that we need to look at as doing also. So people travel in here that know SSD will have a place to dance, If it doesn't take off around the country, then, that's a different story. But keeping things consistent with what they're doing in other areas is important.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think over here again, yeah. And then we got someone up front in the expensive seats.
Well, I'm a fan of Dave Harry. My comment really wasn't just to pat him on the back. My question was that we are exposing square dancing to a whole bunch of young people, and yet we don't see these people get into the program later on. Some maybe a lot later. I have an optometry practice, and I see a lot of kids, and many of them know Dancing Dave and are really smiling when they talk about the program that he does, but we don't see them later on. And my question is, how do we get from that level into the organization? I'm sorry, Lee Barnhart, Samina Squares.
The question is bringing them once, do I read that right, that they dance early on and then they leave and come back? Or how do you get them back?
Yeah, how do we get it back?
That's a very good question for your question. I was talking to several people over the weekend, and I was doing it really from my caller school standpoint because it's a good analogy, because if they come to a caller school as a kid, they're obviously dancing, so it's hand in hand. And say, well, they come and they're gung-ho at 13 or 14 and they really want to call and they love it. And then they become 16, 17 and they may get a job, or they start dating, or in life they graduate, they go to college, and then we lose them. And sometimes you get them back. They'll remember the fun they had, but if they start a family, then their kids are little, it might take them 25, 30 years. And they may come back. I've had dancers through the years say to me, we used to dance when we were teenagers, but then, we went to college, we got married, we had kids. Now we're empty nesters, and we never forgot how good it was. Again, there's no magic pill of how to get them back, but I'll tell you right now, the Pacific Northwest is well known for kids, and whatever you're doing, keep it up, because we couldn't hold a candle. The rest of the country can't hold a candle to what you're doing up here. So I just don't have an answer for that. If I had answers for all this stuff, this hall would be packed and I wouldn't be standing up here. Right here.
Gene Courier, Southwestern Council and Square Ones. Is there really a difference between SSD and B51 or basic?
There's a slight difference. There's some calls that were taken from the mainstream program and not from the basic program. There is a slight difference. I guess the description would be there's probably about 17 calls less on SSD that are on the full mainstream. But again, and the program's not written in stone. I mean, I could tell you Jerry's story, who we lost in December. This was Jerry's baby, and it had been sitting there for many, many years. And I was the chairman the past 2 years, and I could tell you that I don't think a week would go by I would not get a call at like midnight or 1 in the morning from Jerry ranting and raving about something because he was so passionate about it. But Jerry would also tell everyone, look, these calls that are on the initial SSD are not written in stone. They could be changed. The program should be flexible. It should be breathable. But we need to get a start somewhere. So there is a slight difference. And a good caller can call, if you do your work, can call an SSD program to a full mainstream hall. And I bet you half the hall wouldn't even know that they were doing an SSD program. Because you just wouldn't. Like somebody said, do you realize Jerry Junk did the basic 25 or basic 50? He said, no, I didn't realize that. So it's not necessary. Sometimes we get bogged down with names and titles. If I wanted to call an SSD dance, I could do it to a full mainstream audience. Some of you might not realize that it was an SSD program. To you, it was just a mainstream dance. It was fun, sociable. Any other questions? Oh,
David, back to the school programs real quick to kind of clarify some of that. The school programs really is my full-time job. I teach in more or less 30 schools a year, all day long. My goal really isn't to recruit those students into the current square dance clubs. My goal is really to excite them about square dancing so that somewhere in their life they may be enticed to come into a square dance class. We do get a few. First Friday Fun Fest, before COVID hit, in the spring, we had a square of high school students that danced with us, I think 3 months through our June Hot Diggity Dog Dance. And then, of course, they went off to college after that. So yeah, there's some of them that come out. We had a 6th grade square come out one night. They had a week of square dancing and danced with us at First Friday Fun Fest. We always have what we call a hot hash showdown right before we take our little break. And the way it works is you dance until your square breaks down. When your square breaks down, your square looks and stands in the potluck line. The little 6th grade square was the last one standing.
I believe it.
And of course, as soon as they were the last one up standing, we went way beyond what we were doing with that program. They were doing swing throughs and runs and all kinds of stuff. And we finally broke them down so they could get in the potluck line and take their little hot hash down dangle. But I'm going to try something different this year in the schools, in some of the schools, not all of them, because I teach everything from kindergarten to high school. So kindergarten students, it'd be a little hard to do what I'm talking about. But in the middle schools I work with, I'm going to see if I can find a time slot where we can actually have a caller's clinic or a caller's class. And it's not going to be full-blown like you would teach, because there's not that kind of time. But if I can teach them sight resolution, if I can teach them how to dance to choreography, figure out who their corner is, who their corner's partner is, and who their partner is, that kind of stuff that we do in sight resolution, then during their lunch period or some time during the school, they can bring those students in that have danced with me and start their own square dance club within that school. And maybe from there, the activity will start to grow. Maybe we could have some competitions between schools and whatever. But it's a thought. I still do it occasionally. I used to, on my last day of school with the kids, I'd hold the microphone up in the air and say, who wants to try it? And you'd get a whole handful of them that come up and want to do it. And some of them would just clown around, and circle left and element left, circle left and element left, circle left. Well, try some other choreography, circle left and element left, then you take the microphone away. I had a 7th grade girl, it was her first year in my program. And I gave, she came up, took the microphone, and she did. She called a sequence of calls, danced them all over the place, and resolved. And so I said, go ahead, do some more. She called some more, and they went through a lot of choreography and resolved. She had learned how to resolve on her own by watching it. Unfortunately, as an 8th grader, she broke her leg, so she missed out on square dancing. And as a 9th grader, she didn't have PE during the time I was at the school. So, you know, we lost a lot of talent right there. But I think if we do something like that in the schools, maybe that will spark an interest within the school to work. Because I'm only in a school for anywhere from a week to 10 days, and then I'm off to another school. In a week to 10 days, we cover the majority of the mainstream program and a selected handful of plus movements, depending on the school. And it's all competition oriented. My little hook and lure, whatever, is a competition, and that's what turns the students on. It's not that they do singing calls, and it's not that I preach this is how you have to do it. It's this is what we're going to do, and see if you can beat the rest of this classroom out. You know, when you've got 25 squares on the floor each class, that becomes a pretty stiff competition, and they just eat it up. They come in at lunchtime, fill the gymnasium.
Yeah, they love competition. Well, I guess that's it. I don't see any other questions. It's gone a long time. I'd like to personally thank you. I've had a great time being at Circulate for the first time. You've been a great group. Hopefully I've left you with a few ideas. I think it's, you know, we have to work together. Don't be afraid of change. Don't change just for change's sake. But, you know, we're at a crossroads post-convention. And I didn't think I had any business cards because I haven't printed them in like 10 years. I have like 3 up here if anyone would like one. And don't forget to fill out the evaluation forms. If you need help, I'll help you. Thank you very much.